Ma'am,
Yeah, ready.
let's do it.
Well, welcome, Meaghan. We're so excited to have you today on our podcast. Thanks for joining us. So we'd love to hear a little bit about who you are and what you do just to get us started.
Mhm.
Tell our listeners a little bit of your background.
Mm. Okay, so long story short, I have a master's degree in education, and when I was young, wanted to be a music teacher. So I did that for a long time and realized that it wasn't something I wanted to do long term. So I shifted and worked in education marketing for about 5 years, and got the bright idea that I wanted to start my own business because I wanted to be the master of my own time. That was really important to me. So in 2019, I got my yoga teacher certification, and that kind of opened the door for me. The sequence of events starting in 2017, 2018, 2019 to the spiritual world, so to speak. And I thought to myself, oh, maybe I want to do this as a business owner. So I started my business in 2019, and originally I was just doing marketing and it was fun and I was good at it, but it wasn't fully fulfilling. So I decided to shift and be a business coach that focuses on energetics. So
Mm.
teaching people about their energetic blueprints, like their astrology chart, their Ayurvedic constitution, about yoga philosophy and human design, and how they can use those tools to empower them to make decisions in their business. And so that's where I am now. And I last year launched a membership community, and I teach master classes and I do workshops and all sorts of really fun things. I do one-to-one coaching, and that's where I am.
Wow,
Yeah.
incredible.
hmm
So if somebody starts working with you, what does that process look like? Just what's the first thing that you do with someone?
So the first thing that we do is we look at your energetic blueprint. So we'll take a look at your astrology chart. We'll take a look at your Ayurvedic constitution, your human design chart. And based on those findings, we will build a foundational plan for our time together that incorporates your natural strengths that are inside of your energetic blueprint. So it's a way that I find really helps to motivate my clients because we're not coming at it from the perspective of here are all of your deficits, here are all the things that you need to fix, which can sometimes be the case when you're thinking about business coaching. But it's like, oh, okay, these are all the things that you're already really good at. So, how do we leverage these things and help you build a business and build a system and build processes that really amplify those strengths that you already have?
Nice. So is that something, it sounds like you're really passionate about that.
hmm
Do you still continue to do a lot of these things as your hobby, or how do you feel like turning that into a business has changed that for you? Do you still find
Mm-hmm.
as much fun and joy in those activities, or do you find
You
it
know, it's funny because I feel like I flip-flopped a little bit. When I first started my career, music was my career, but all of this other stuff was a bit of a hobby.
more?
And now I feel like it's the opposite.
Hmm.
The spiritual, aspects, the energetic blueprint, all that is my job. And now music is my hobby.
Oh,
Yeah. So it's just kind of interesting how that
Yeah.
happened. And um, from a music perspective, I find so much more joy in having that as a hobby rather than having it as a job.
Hmm.
And I find a lot more joy in using astrology to build a business rather than just kind of having it as a hobby. So I
Oh,
think it
I
worked
find
out.
it
yeah.
so interesting that you had that career, right? Which I think anybody like me would have probably just been like rage quit and I'm never touching music again. But you didn't do that. You
Mm,
recognized that early on that it wasn't something that you wanted to do. You just didn't have that joy on that business side, but you
mhm,
didn't necessarily walk away from it. You kept that there and just transitioned what that meant to you as a hobby. And that's really a great little thing to share with our audience
Hmm.
because I feel like we're talking about with the new year having like new intentions, right? And making sure that you know that you don't just have to stick with something just because you started it, right? You can walk away. But you not only walked away, but you also shifted what it looked like to you. And I
Hmm.
think that was what a great example to give to our
Yeah.
listeners to see how somebody could truly do that. And just have different meaning in those things. That's
Yeah.
so interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, and then and when we were preparing for this episode, you mentioned that you had some experiences in your life that have really helped you to pivot and focus on self-care. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have struggled with my health for the last 10 years in lots of different ways. I've had a lot of like stomach issues, and I had my gallbladder removed in 2013, which was I was still teaching at that point, and I was only given a week off for surgery and recovery. And I will never forget, at that point, I was teaching elementary school, going in the week after I had had, my surgery and recovery, and all of the little kindergartners, all they wanted to do was give me a hug, but I couldn't because I just had this huge, massive, abdominal surgery. And I think that that was the point in my career as a teacher where I knew that I wanted this to be more of a hobby than a career.
Mm.
And likewise, I think all of those subsequent issues that I had, I had COVID in 2022, and then I have long COVID, and
Mm.
struggling with that, has taught me that I really love what I'm doing now because it allows me to have the flexibility to take care of myself.
That's
Mm-hmm.
great.
I think that that's something that, especially as women, we really struggle with, is
Mhm.
finding a career that is fulfilling and supportive financially, but
Mhm.
also flexible.
Yeah,
Mhm.
definitely.
Oh yeah. Oh
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Especially because I would say most of our audience members are moms, and like childcare comes
Mm-hmm.
into a lot of that
Mhm.
aspect on top of if
Mm-hmm.
you have health
Yeah,
issues,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So it's like you have that there.
Mhm. So when you were working as a teacher, I mean, it sounds like it wasn't really that you didn't enjoy the what you were teaching. It was that like lack of freedom and lack of
Mhm.
time, right? Yeah. So that makes
Mhm.
sense. Yeah.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
So now that you have that change and shift, do you feel like you are able to really balance your boundaries of self-care and business and hobby? And if so, what are some tips that you can share with the audience and how they could do that?
Mhm. So, one of the things that I had to learn really early on in my business is that I could not build a business the way that all of the online gurus were telling you to build it,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Scale to six figures in 60 days, blah, blah,
Right.
blah, blah. I just knew
Pressure.
that yeah, wasn't going to work for me because of all of the other things that I was contending with. And I also knew that, me as a person, I prefer slow and steady growth over exponential growth and, fast things going really quickly. So, that was having all of the different health issues and kind of being forced to slow down
Mhm.
was a blessing in disguise because it showed me what was truly important
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
and what I thought was important, but wasn't actually getting me anywhere
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
and potentially was even harming me.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that being able to use those really stressful experiences to shape a life-centric business, which is kind of like a term that I like
I
to
like
use.
that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Um, was something that I'm very grateful that I learned early on because I think that something that happens often is that we get so caught up in what other people are telling us that we have to do that
Mhm.
we burn ourselves out and we
Oh
don't
yeah.
realize that we're burned out until we're way far past,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
where we should be.
Mhm.
So that was, one experience that I had that was really important in kind of helping me balance things. But the other thing, especially this year, that I think is going to be a really important challenge and task for me is that this year I'm trying to conceive.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so
Yes.
I am trying to think about what does that mean for me and how do I
Mhm.
shift my business knowing
Mhm.
that my husband and I would like to have a child and knowing that I will be the primary caregiver and so there's lots of unknowns, but
Mhm.
things that I'm again really grateful for having this kind of flexibility.
Definitely. I mean, you've set yourself up for well, yeah, just the flexibility when you do become a mom. That's
Mhm.
so critical for happiness. It seems like, it's just we can't run ourselves into the ground. So it's nice to have that
Mhm.
foundation already like laid down. So what right now with your business, it sounds like, you're still growing your business and everything. Do you still have, and so that's separate from your self-care time, or do you consider that your self-care time at this point?
Mm, I think maybe it's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
I think that one thing that really nourishes me is my community.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Definitely.
started a membership community last year in June called the Venusian Society.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that was really important to me was to create this online community space for women entrepreneurs where we weren't just talking business, but we were also talking everyday life
Mm-hmm.
things.
Yeah.
So if you're familiar with astrology, Venus is the archetype of play and pleasure and self-care. And so I really wanted to infuse this community space with time for work and also time for play.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful.
Um, and so that has been one aspect that has really filled my cup over the last year. But I also think that it's important to take breaks often and take steps away when you need it. And, as someone who worked in corporate for a number of years and before that worked at a school, it was really hard for me to take breaks.
Yes.
I mean, as a teacher, you really only get like two pee breaks the whole the whole
Right, right,
day.
right.
More than
Yes. Right,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
So it was really hard for me to reprogram and say to myself, okay, when I'm feeling frustrated and I just need to walk away, it's okay for me to get up from my desk
Mm-hmm.
and take a walk, even if I just take a walk around my house.
Mm-hmm.
Or even if I just go make myself a little cup of tea or something, just take a mental break and move away from the space.
Mm-hmm.
And that really can kind of shift some of that stagnation.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah.
What are some of your other hobbies that you do outside of music and your business?
So I am, my best friend is a fiber artist.
Hmm.
And so I really love supporting her and supporting the art community. I go to a lot of events for them. I volunteer to help them create, public art, and it's like a really fun way to tap back into that artist part
Mm-hmm.
of me
Mm-hmm.
in a very different way. I also love volunteering in general. I love supporting nonprofits here, specifically in Charlotte, specifically people who are struggling with housing crises or people who are struggling with, I guess, backstory. When I was the first year that I was ever a teacher, I worked at a school that was a Title I school, which, if your listeners are not familiar with that, those are children who are in poverty.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And that really opened my eyes to, because I did not grow up that way. But it really opened my eyes up to how many people here in the US who are just kind of silently suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really important to me to support local organizations that specifically work with kids.
Mm-hmm.
There is this beautiful organization here in Charlotte that I support that helps foster families.
Mm-hmm.
And I really love volunteering my time with them when I can, or even just kind of bringing awareness
Mm-hmm.
to, their mission and that sort of thing. I think it's really important. And yeah, even though I'm not a teacher anymore, I still love working with kids as much as I
Yeah.
can.
I
That's
really
amazing.
do like it.
Mm-hmm.
It
Mm-hmm.
really does sound like you might have started off your initial part of your life thinking that your hobby was going to be that music
Mm-hmm.
education side, but quickly learned that that truly just was a passion as a hobby. Like
Mm.
self-awareness that you
Mm-hmm.
had is just
Mm-hmm.
really
Mm-hmm.
impressive
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
to get there. And
Thanks.
it sounds like you like volunteering is kind of a time consuming thing, I would assume. Um, and being a business owner is a time
Mm-hmm.
consuming
Mm-hmm.
thing. Like those are very big tasks in your life. How do you make sure to find that balance between being that business owner and still making time to find that time for that volunteering?
Well, one of the things that I had to learn that, I really struggled with in my 20s was being able to say no.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So I definitely had that, somebody asked me to do something, I'm going to say yes because I want to help them.
Yep.
Yeah.
That kind of like soldier spirit, right? Or that
Mm-hmm.
um, people pleaser.
Yes.
And that would get me in situations where I would be way over my head. I would have way too many commitments. And then I would have a mental breakdown and like cancel like three things.
Done that
Yeah.
like 5 times
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
I've seen it.
And that was a really hard lesson for me to learn, but I feel like I've slowly begun to embody that in my 30s is, um, I have that bleeding heart and I want to help everyone, but I can't. And
Mhm.
so when I have those times where I can volunteer and I have more space in my calendar, I do. But when I don't have the space to volunteer, I can still give back in other ways. I can support them financially. I can support them by posting and boosting their things on social media.
Hmm.
I can go to their events, if there's time and space in my calendar. But I think what's really important for me is looking at my calendar. I kind of have like a little date with myself on Sunday evenings
Hmm.
where I look at my calendar and I say, like, okay, how full am I this week?
Mhm.
And if I'm too full, then that's it. I'm not taking on any other commitments. But if I have some space here or there, then I can fill it in with other things, with like hobbies and things that I enjoy and things that will support my community.
Yeah, that's so great to be intentional about it. We talk a lot about that and make just holding yourself accountable just by scheduling things in. That's such a great tip for people. Yeah.
It really does
Mhm.
seem like that is like, as we continue to go through this, that seems to be the recurring theme is
Definitely.
you really need
It's
to mark
intention.
it on
Yeah.
your calendar, like make that time for
Hmm.
yourself. And as we've mentioned before, it doesn't have to be 2 hours and then you go. Like even you're saying, you're just looking at your calendar on a Sunday and you're just like, okay, what kind of time do I
Hmm.
have? What can my mental capacity handle? Is it just reposting a post that they put? Done. Okay, I
Yeah.
feel like I touched base on what I wanted to, while also keeping yourself self-care,
Right.
taking care of
Yeah.
you on that
Right.
Sunday.
Yeah.
And you talk about being like a people pleaser and like, saying no, like that's a
Hmm.
challenge that I think women tend to feel. Like
Hmm.
we just feel this innate um, pressure to want to be that supportive
Hmm.
person for everyone and be there for everything. And it can overwhelm you so
Definitely.
fast,
Yeah.
and it really does take saying no. And no doesn't have to have this negative connotation, right? It could
Hmm.
just be like, no, but I could help in this way, or maybe not at this moment, but I can on this day. It's just kind of changing the way you think of no. No doesn't have to be that definitive,
Hmm.
like it's not happening, I'm not helping you, and it can't be there because that doesn't make us feel good. That's
Right.
not who we are.
Right.
And it's just
Right.
like,
Right.
Hmm.
we're here
Hmm.
to help,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So I think those are good points that you brought up
Hmm.
and talking about people pleaser and no.
Definitely.
Hmm.
Yeah, I had a business coach I worked with, I think last year. I was in this kind of membership community and she was a business coach for spiritual entrepreneurs. And she had this meeting where she brought up I don't remember what she called them, but it was delegate, dictate, or delete. And she said, go through and she was talking specifically about your business, but you could do this with your life too, right? What can you delegate? What can you give away to other people? What can you dictate? So you kind of like get it out of your head and you just kind of write it down.
Hmm.
And what can you delete? What can you let go of?
That's great.
And I thought, oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah. I never thought about the dictate part.
Hmm.
That's something that I feel like is really interesting. I'm gonna have to
Hmm.
try that
Hmm.
because sometimes I
Hmm.
just have like mental load,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Where it's
Oh
like it's
yeah.
not even like actionable
Hmm.
items that I need to
Hmm.
do. It's
Yeah.
just like just thoughts,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
thoughts that are
Hmm.
overwhelming me. And I never thought about the idea of like dictating them down to see if that would just alone
Hmm.
clear up mental space.
Hmm.
That's an interesting
Yeah, I
concept,
like that idea.
Meaghan.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I loved being part of her membership community. It was really great. Because I feel like, and that's another thing I think that's really important for women, not just in business, but in general, is finding community that
Yeah.
can support you where you are.
Yes. Yes, especially where you are.
Hmm.
Great add to
Hmm.
that. I
Yeah.
like that a lot.
Hmm.
Because
Mhm.
sometimes I think we might have an established community that maybe isn't it's where we were, or
Hmm.
maybe it's where we think we want to be
Hmm.
or where we want to go, but it's not right when you really sit down and think about it, it doesn't align with where you're going.
Right.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with, transitioning to a different community. It doesn't mean that you have to say, I can't be a part of this community
Right.
anymore. It just means trying to find that community that supports you where you're currently working or where
Hmm.
you're currently at.
Hmm.
There's it's like chapters in a book,
Hmm.
right?
Yep.
Like I feel like there was friends I had in past lives that was like they were everything to me in those moments, and that was a really beautiful chapter.
Hmm.
But it truly was just that chapter, and now I moved on to this next chapter where Erin is my everything. we're exploring this hobby. And I think that's just a really good point to put in there. I really like that little note at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's the importance of hobbies too, right? When you find that community that can support you outside of your everyday life,
Mhm.
and stepping into something that is just for pleasure.
Mhm. Absolutely. Pleasure, joy, it can be just the littlest thing, truly.
Yeah.
Like the fact that you're like even just reposting a post brought you joy and pleasure of helping those that you really felt like could need it. Like it's as simple as that.
Yep.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Megan's brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, Megan, so I kind of want to go back to, because a lot of the times that we talk on the show about just doing hobbies just for pleasure, right?
Mhm.
But you actually took a hobby and you turned it into a business. So that's kind of unique for our show. We haven't really talked a whole lot about folks that do that. What was advice that you would give somebody who is thinking about turning a hobby into a business? Was there any lessons that you learned along the way?
There's a few things that I would say. Number one, don't think that you have to turn every hobby into a monetized
I like that.
thing,
Mhm.
right?
I agree with that.
Because sometimes what can happen is that hobby loses its sparkle
Mhm.
and it no longer brings you joy.
Mhm.
So I would say if you're interested in monetizing your hobby, just be thoughtful about it and intentional about it. And I don't want to discourage someone from doing that, but just be aware that that could be something that happens.
Mhm.
But the other thing that I really struggled with in specifically bringing astrology into my business was that I did not ever think that I was good enough
Wow.
because it was a hobby. It was something that I had no quote unquote formal education in. Of course, I have education in it from learning, from different mentors and that sort of thing, but it wasn't like I had gone back to school and gotten a degree in astrology.
Sure.
That doesn't really, I mean, I think that exists, but like it's not really a mainstream type of thing.
Right.
Mhm.
And that was something that I really struggled with, bringing to life because I was worried that my curiosity and passion alone wouldn't be enough to consider myself to be an expert.
Wow. Mhm.
So it's can be something that really plays with your head. So I would say that, just be mindful of the mindset work that
Yeah.
goes into bringing a hobby into life as a business.
Yeah.
And know that if you want something bad enough, you can make it happen.
Yeah.
True story.
Mhm.
True story. Very empowering
Mhm.
statement. I got goosebumps from that. Oh my goodness. No, I think that's a great point because you're right. I think if you go into every hobby trying to make a monetization out of it, like you're right, like it doesn't become fun anymore because then you put this pressure on yourself that like your livelihood depends on this now, right? And you're trying to get in there where, in your case, you are a success story because you do have or two that you kind of found a way to hone in together and make this one successful thing. But it sounds like you were intentional with it. You really picked the ones that you felt truly were going to bring you joy serving, because it really seems like you're just somebody who just enjoys serving people, which I just think is just so
Definitely.
incredible, Megan. I just wish the world had a whole bunch more of you, right? And so like you took these two hobbies, put them together to create something that serves people, right? And you can tell just by talking to you that you have found that perfect balance of allowing this business to still bring you joy while also still tapping into that creative, nurturing nature that you seem to naturally have. Your future kids are going to be so lucky.
No,
Have a great mother because it just really do care. And I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
Great job. Was it difficult for you when you were looking at your hobbies to kind of pick which ones you were going to try to broaden into as far as a business? Or did you know from the get-go, like once you discovered yoga, that was it? And then you discovered astrology and you're like, that's the perfect marriage. We're going in.
I don't think that I knew immediately. I tried yoga first. I got my 200-hour yoga teacher certification, and then I started teaching, in local studios and realized that that wasn't really bringing me joy. So I took a step back from that. Um, and then shortly after, I began teaching yoga philosophy, and that's what really lit me up. Um, More so than just kind of teaching a typical yoga class.
Hmm.
But I think with astrology, I knew right away that it was something that I wanted to create as a business because I could see so clearly that it was a tool that could really support the women that I was already working with as a marketing and business coach. And
Great.
I could see how it would fit in like really naturally.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And I remember I did my first course in astrology in 2019. And I remember after I finished the course, I went up to the teacher and I said, okay, can I start like doing readings for people now? And she goes, yeah, go ahead.
Yes, you
Like,
can.
you don't need my permission. You
Right.
have this certification now. Like, go ahead and do it. Um, so yeah, I think it just kind of took me the courage um, to say to myself, like, I am an astrologer.
Hmm.
This
Hmm.
is what
Yeah.
I do.
Mhm.
Um, Before, I could really start monetizing that in my business.
Hmm. Something I want to circle back on that you also just kind of touched on here is you talked about how you felt that if you weren't certified in something or hadn't spent years in a hobby, that you didn't see yourself as qualified. Whereas with astrology, like you got certified.
Hmm.
Do you feel like that certification is what made you feel like you could confidently add it to the yoga piece? Or do you feel like if you didn't get that certification, would you have still tried to find that marriage with that?
Mm,
Would you still have felt justified to yourself?
I don't know. I think that's a good question. Astrology for me, particularly because it's such a complex system,
Mhm.
was really hard to bring to life in my business because there are always going to be people who know more about the system than you do.
Hmm.
And there are a million different ways to read an astrology chart.
Mhm.
So it felt difficult to break through
Mhm.
all of the noise and feel like what I was bringing to the table was unique.
Mhm.
But I think that I just had to do it.
Yeah,
Hmm.
you just gotta go.
And yeah, I mean, that's what really kind of gave me the courage to really add it to my
Yeah.
business.
I love
Hmm.
it. All right, so if you could go back in time, right? Because that you've had the opportunity to switch your passions in your career, right? If you could go back in time, would you do anything differently, or would you have done it the same exact way? Do you think you would have appreciated music and education as a hobby versus yoga now kind of being where your lifestyle is?
I think about this all the time, and I don't necessarily regret any of my experiences because I went to a school that had a school of music. And so it was a very special time in college. And I really feel like I learned a lot, as a human.
Yeah.
But I do sometimes wish that I would have gotten a degree in business because I do feel like I have had to bootstrap that a little
Okay.
bit.
Yeah.
Um, so I mean, I feel like there's maybe a little bit of regret there, but also all of the experiences that I had as a teacher, I think set me up to be a very good coach and mentor for
Mhm.
people. And I'm not sure that I would be as good at what I'm doing currently if I hadn't had those previous experiences.
Yeah,
Mhm.
definitely.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Do you still engage with yoga and astrology as just a hobby aspect, or is it purely only utilized in your life as your business side?
Yeah, so I definitely, specifically yoga is still a hobby of mine.
Mhm.
I practice, or, I, with having long COVID, it was really hard because I couldn't practice for a while.
I bet.
But I try to practice as much as possible the physical practice of yoga. But also, I I've always been a voracious reader.
Hmm.
And so I have this huge long list of all these books that I want people to, buy me for for holidays and my birthday. And,
Mhm.
I'm actually like looking at them right now. They're over here on my table.
Just a nice little stack.
Yeah. So that's definitely something that I'll pick up as like a hobby of mine is to just kind of learn a little bit more
Mhm.
about whatever particular system. Like I remember last year, I was really interested in learning more about human design. So I bought this book and I went and sat at a coffee shop for 2 hours and I just kind of went through and that was just a very joyous experience for me, just sitting there sipping my
Mm.
coffee and
Oh
studying.
yeah. Isn't it the dream?
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
to sit in a book,
Sometimes. Yes.
coffee, read a book. I love it. That's fantastic. I mean, I feel like you've really provided not only our audience but with me with some tidbits that I'm really walking away with. Like I'm still thinking about the delegate, dictate, delete. Like, and that just rolls
Yeah.
right there. Like I love alliteration. Like I'll never forget it. So I guess where I'm kind of at now is what's one thing that you would want our audience to take away from this discussion that they could really just walk away with and feel like they have that time. They just need to make that priority, that space for self-care and hobbies.
Hmm. Don't underestimate the importance of having something that is just for pure joy in your life. No other reason than that it brings you joy.
Yes,
Love
that's
that.
great.
Yep.
I feel like that's just so Salma.
Yep.
Good that
Yep.
goes on the socials, Erin, right there.
Yep.
I think that was beautiful. Meaghan, you really are a very special person. Like I said, the nature, the nurture of you that just exudes just from talking with you is kind of intoxicating. Like I feel so privileged to have been able to talk to you today. I'm sure Erin
Yeah.
does too. We really hope that you'll continue to keep a relationship with us. Can you tell our audience members where they can find you?
Yeah. So the best place to find me is on Instagram and Threads. And I'll give you that information because my name is spelled a little funky. But it's at meaghan.m.dunham.
Okay.
And my website is meaghanmdunham.com. So if you want to book an astrology reading, or if you're interested in business coaching, or if you're interested in the community, that's where you can find more information.
Awesome.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been great to have you on the show today, Meaghan. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us, and we look forward to talking to you again.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
So then we'll cut the episode there. And then I think I already mentioned this already, but we'll record like an intro for the episode when you don't have to sit here and listen to us figure it out.
Yeah.
And then we'll reach out to you within the month because the episode will go out within the month, and we'll post it on all of our socials. Like I said, we'll make sure to put your website and your handles on the episode description as well so that our audience members can find you right there collaborating on some posts. You're the social media person. Am I missing anything?
That's it.
That's it. Meaghan,
Okay.
well, it was so awesome meeting you. Really.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, you have a great day.
Yeah.
You enjoy the weather, and we'll be in touch